Hello everyone and welcome back to the Brightworks. Today taking a look at some high true skill Supreme Straits. Almost forgot the name of the map there. Can't believe it. One of my favorite maps of all time. I almost didn't remember the name. Looks like our players are almost set up here for the start of this game. Slyfox choosing interesting position here, but it looks like we're waiting on one more player to load in. So while we wait, why don't we meet our teams today? Spawning in the northeastern corner, representing the blue team, we have Isildur. Isildur? I think that's an I, right? Or maybe it's a 1 or a lowercase l. Either way, Isildur, our blue player here, taking the beachfront water position for the Northern Sea for the blue team. Going to be very important that they win that one. We'll have to see. What are we writing here? Water, wallet, wobbly? Very excellent cursive writing here. I wonder if this person's playing Beyond All Reason on a touchpad. You know, one of those drawing tablets. That would be pretty funny here. Spawning for the blue team here on the C lane position, we have Markvis, a player we've seen around more than a few times. Very, very good player. Very high true skill as well, up to 30. It's well into the lower leagues of what I would consider a pro. Spawning here in the southwestern corner, we have our red player spawning in the mirror to their blue counterpart. We have Somber Muse representing the red team on the beachfront position here. Likewise, going to be very important that they contest their C lane, and so I'm expecting that we see some very high quality naval play, so we'll have to keep our eyes out to see how that goes. Spawning in the C lane position here for the red team, we have Mater 1, or Matter 1. We'll call you Mater 1. It's like Toe Mater, but without the tuh. Mater 1. Going to be spawning in the C-line position here, and hopefully we see some interesting shenanigans come out of them. I would love to see a hovercraft platform. I'd love to see any kind of shenanigans like that. But we're going to skip ahead here and get right into this match. Should be here for about 30 to 40 minutes, depending on how long I stall out these intros. Geez, wasting all this time, but I'm sure you guys love to hear exactly who we're going to be lining up against each other. This will be an interesting matchup of Markvis versus Somber Muse. Both very strong players, so this will be a great example of some high-quality gameplay. Do not know about Mater. I cannot vouch for them, but I guess this is their debut, and they get to show off their skills in this match here. They have a tough opponent. They're on the harder side. This is the harder side to get started on. Once you have the lead here, it can escalate pretty quickly, but getting in the water is the hardest part here, so we'll have to see exactly what Mater plans to do. I'm looking for the bot lab. Oh, we're going for hovercraft. All right, I think that's the right decision. Get those hovercraft out, harass early, and you can have a excellent start on the C lane position. How's the C lane doing over here? Looks like Markvis going for a bot lab. Interesting. So we're not planning on expanding out into the water, or at the very least not to this island. Maybe we'll move our commander over there eventually, but for the meantime, we are going to mostly be focusing on land-based expansion. All right, I'm here for it. Somber Muse already stepping into the water, getting their toes wet. We've got some tidal generators coming up to satiate the power-hungry Navy constructors. They're also very metal-hungry as well, so it's important to get this economy well-suited all around. Ooh, we almost leaked metal there, but I think we were safe. Get the Navy lab up and running. Quite expensive these Navy ships are, but the lab itself, only 600 metal. So we should be well set. I'm going to wipe this away now. Not sure what this message meant to the person playing here, and actually, Nun Yun Nu Yim. Hold on. Nun Yun U Oi Mi. Nun Yun Noi Mi. Orange player here. Why is it the orange players that always have difficult names for me to pronounce? I'm not sure. They always just give that one to the person with the most syllables. Orange player here, stepping into the water. That's quite an interesting development here. So we are actually going to see a 2 versus 1, at least for the time being here on the Northern Sea. So that's very interesting indeed. Now we do have some Seekers headed out already, and I absolutely love to see it. They're queued to exactly the position that I would send them to. Although I might send them a little bit further up before sending them in, just for safety's sake. But certainly this is not a bad idea whatsoever. These Seekers are going to move out, and they're hopefully going to contest a little bit of the blue players' expansion. Commander moving forward now to go claim these metal extractors and step into the water. That's absolutely the right move, and I think Mater 1 doing an excellent job here in their debut match, showing off exactly what they can do. Somber Muse being sure to get quite a few of these dolphins out, as well as a single skater, serving as a patrol boat, as well as an a crewed anti-air ship. Going to be very nice for making sure that this character over here, Markvis, cannot breach the naval field of play. We do have a coastal torpedo launcher coming up, the Jellyfish. It's funny, I don't think I've ever looked at the name for that thing. But this could be quite interesting. If this naval torpedo launcher does end up going up as it is right now, it could be very difficult for Somber Muse to contest this area. You can see this thing has a pretty big radius. Yeah, it's going to start working on these ships here. It is quite threatening. Markfist using the cover that this thing provides now to step into the water, keep expanding the defensive posturing here. Very nicely done by Markfist. This is definitely a good way to do it. If you can't get into the water before your opponent shuts you down, this is definitely the right way to do it. You just step yourself out into the water using your defenses. Now these are outranged by battleships. Are they? I always forget. Destroyers. Sorry, not battleships. Battleships are T2. Destroyers are Tier 1. All these defenses are outranged by destroyers, so it'd be very nice to see a destroyer coming out of Somber News, whereas right now we were just massing dolphins, although it looks like we do have one in the production chamber now, so eventually we will see that there. Might be too slow though, so we'll have to keep an eye on that. Middle of the map, let's just check our lineup really quick. We have bots versus vehicles and vehicles versus vehicles. So Scarpy, our bot player here, our Cortex bot player, going to be the only one that's not playing vehicles on this front line. As far as faction lineups here, it is all Armada except for the one bot player. So we're going to see the Cortex bots and the Armada vehicles. Very nicely done. Bing, bing, bang, doing a good job setting up this defensive line, but taking, one hit after another from this missile truck, 2% per hit, but it's just firing one little shot every time. Eventually it gets blown to smithereens by these Januses. So devastating. Now, just barely caught a construction ship actually going down there. Very nice catch. Bringing that down can definitely be quite hindering to the expansion progress here of Blue. And the 2 versus 1 nature of the setup that we have going on here is going to be quite difficult for Sildor to hold on to. Seekers have beached on the mainland and are starting to ravage this backline. Looks like they've already taken down some production over here. And a light laser turret comes up in the meantime. There's a single Seeker hanging out over here. I wonder if there was another one somewhere back here. I'm looking for the wreckage. I don't see the wreckage of it, but there is a few postured around here to continue harassing wherever they can. Very nicely done. Excellent job. You can see that means the Mater 1 did have to build a coastal torpedo launcher rather. It's not launching coast. They did build the coastal torpedo launcher, but I don't think they really needed to. I think because of their harassment, they managed to keep their enemy withdrawn. Also that, and the fact that they have a teammate who is also contesting the sea here with their own destroyers already out on the field. Very nicely done by the red team. That does mean the front line is going to be a little under-supported here, because typically this orange player would be supporting the front line player Slyfox here. Just like, I guess purple isn't really doing that. Purple going for tech instead. Although I guess the mirrored position would be Joysko here. Joysko forced to focus on... Well, what are we focusing on? I'm not sure. I guess Joysko does have some units out here, so we were probably producing mostly just units on the front line. So, okay, so yeah, so they were supporting the front line. That's very good to see. So far, very standard. Everything is looking good. We're following the book. Remember, the book is all the plays that have worked in the past. You only go off the book if things are looking desperate, or you have an advantage that you can coast on. Bit of a navy is already out from Markfist, though. We see a couple of these assault frigates, which are a very nice counter here. They outrange these dolphins so they can lay out some free fire, which is very nice to see. The destroyer is the only thing that can outrange these assault frigates, so that's kind of your siege option for if you want to start taking those down. But Markfist is being very conscious of the tiny navy that he has and making sure that it is not wasted, which is absolutely necessary. You have to make sure that you're getting 100% of the value out of whatever units you have, especially when you're in this position, because every single one of these units is important. The Dolphins are posturing over here. They're thinking about going in on the base here. Destroyer firing at the missile frigate here. Actually, it's firing on these these offshore torpedo launchers. It will fall back, though, after just a little bit of time. Somber Muse is definitely looking to push this player out of the water as quickly as possible. I think some submarines would do phenomenally here. Submarines, of course, would be able to siege all of these assault frigates without them being able to lay a single hand on them. But for now, it looks like we were just committed to pumping out as many Dolphins as possible. Dolphins are pretty cheap, so I can't blame them. Dolphins at 165 metal versus the Submarines 440. So that could explain that right then and there. Speaking of some submarines here, for Mater 1, moving forward to ravage some of this offshore economy that was set up by our blue player here, Silder. Silder just doing whatever they can to keep their economy intact as they're being pressured by 2 players at once. Very nicely done. Looks like these naval fleets finally met in combat here. Yeah, those defensive structures really are what kept this entire thing in line here. Marquis's production is brought down though, so these few units are very, very important. We can see stalling terribly on metal, but of course there's plenty of metal right here that can just be eaten up off of the seafloor. Marquis is going to have to eat it though. We are also short on metal because our production back here has been shut down by some Seekers, I believe, are what ravaged that initially. Commander in a little bit of trouble back here. Taking fire from, I believe, torpedo launchers on board this destroyer. Scratching up that commander, but not doing too much damage. Just making sure to posture. Front line here looking very, very good for these blue players, of course, because the red team is down a player on the front lines. We only really see 2, although the T2 economy is already being pumped out here, so that might sway this battle nicely. The defense, the static defense, is finally broken, but at the cost of a tremendous amount of this navy here, and I think it's time we need to switch into a composition. We have some bombers coming out. No scouts, but we do have the bombers out. I think we need to switch to a composition here. We need to do 1 destroyer to maybe 1 submarine and 1 assault frigate. Maybe a few Dolphins mixed in for fire support. I think that's going to give you a composition that's much more dynamic and allows you to approach these with a little bit more of a range of options rather than just collapse on top of it and then retreat. The only real 2 strategic options that this commander has at the moment. Either way, though, being sure to rebuild, not giving up quite yet. Very well done by Marquis. We do have some scouts out now. That's very nice to see. The bombers move forward. They will, first of all, find this geothermal power plant. That would be one nice target, but we're going to skip that in favor of ravaging some of this backline economy here. Anti-air turrets start up right away, but I think it might be just a little bit too late here. A lot of these windmills go down. Not as many as they would have liked, though. I think that bombing run specifically could have done a little bit more. More bombers finding the back line here. Sand battery is up, though, and that's going to discourage those bombers from going for that player. Instead, turning their nasty heads towards this production facility here with no anti-air defense, and they find their mark, taking away tons of build power, going to slow down this fusion reactor immensely. Very nicely done. Choosing just the right target there. I would love to see these bombers now dispersed to ravage some of the other economies, but also to take down this T2 lab. If we can blow that up, reduce it to rubble, I think that would be phenomenal. A second sand battery is out, and that means that these are going to be pulled apart rather quickly. Yeah, these sand batteries are resistant to bombing, so they're not going to collapse under these bombers' weight. For the time being, I think just devastating this player back here would probably be the most logical option. Yep, very nicely done. Just keep targeting things with these bombers, and I think you're going to be in a great position here. Bomb this player all the way back to the Stone Age, and unless they receive a constructor from their teammates, they are knocked completely out of the game. Now, Marquis has done a phenomenal job of keeping themselves alive. We do see Resurrection submarines now actually patching together a new navy from the wreckages of the old. Tons of metal here available as well, of course, because there's a huge wreckage field. And I think actually Somber Muse has now blundered this entire naval engagement based on the fact that they had to give up their entire naval presence in order to rebuild here. Yeah, this might end up actually being really, really unfortunate, though. The Northern Sea has been already won by the red team. You can see we're now just expanding. We've got loads of tidal generators planned out here. We did send a unit over here, a hovercraft, to build on this island, and that is actually really, really nice. Very nicely done. The front line is still being pushed in, though, and remember, these metal extractors right here are worth a little bit more metal than usual, so having these denied is quite unfortunate, especially for these frontline players. We do have 2-2 ships out, and these are going to start harassing down some of this defensive line. You can see these missile cruiser ships can just launch these missiles from so far away. They dropped this really cool payload where it's this missile that goes up, and then after a second here, it splits apart into a fragmentation bomb and drops 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 little projectile pellets that land near the impact zone. Very, very cool. So we have units, right? And we're sending them across. We're using them. That's great. Unfortunately, the enemy is using resurrection technology. They're necromancing these units back to life, and so every unit that we send towards them just ends up being a unit that's folded into their army the next time that we go over there. So that's really the problem that's happening here now. Somber Muse has no way to actually properly contest any of this, because no matter how many units they produce, all those units just turn around and end up back in Markvis's army here. So Markvis actually making all the right moves, resurrecting the destroyer before anything else. That's a great idea. Just make sure that all the important ships are resurrected first while continuing to produce out of his own. And you can see just how important building a mixture of units is, because of course these lowly dolphins can't even attack these resurrection submarines, so they just get to resurrect everything completely for free. Really, really powerful stuff. The ship is refloated only to immediately sink again, which is quite funny. But this other navy is going to come right to the rescue here and make sure that these resurrection submarines have more than enough time to patch everything else back together. Somber Muse is slowly slipping here. I think Markvis is in a great position. The front line is in a little bit of trouble as finally the T2 units are out on the field. A big EMP went down right there. I'm not sure if that was a missile or a spy bot. Sort of sounded like a spy bot, if you ask me. I also don't see any Armada T2 factories. Yeah, I guess there's one back here. Either way, a bunch of units got paralyzed right there and are effectively removed from the fight. And these Sheldon are doing a phenomenal job. Sheldon, as well as the Hounds, are doing a phenomenal job of melting down this front line of units. You can see there's a huge metal wasteland right here of all these units. Markvis is definitely in a phenomenal position by this point. This island has been unclaimed too, so I would have loved to see either Somber Muse walk the commander over there, or somebody send a... yeah, we've got a transport here. Send a construction worker over there. Somber Muse also never got this metal extractor. That's quite unfortunate. Yeah, the more I'm looking at it, the more I'm liking the position here for Markvis over Somber Muse. Very nicely done by Markvis. Holding out against all odds here. Destroyer is refloated. It is in quite a bit of trouble, though. It's being shot down by another destroyer, an enemy destroyer, but it will get away in time. The destroyer, of course, can attack these underwater submarines, but it's a little bit preoccupied with the tremendous amount of other forces that are slowly pushing into it here. Yeah, and Markvis realizes he actually has more than enough to go on the offensive for a little while here. Pushes forward, takes down that commander, and just playing extremely defensively. I think it's totally the right move here. Catches a constructor ship. That's a nice catch. And indeed, a lot of this is going to slowly shift into Markvis's favor. So well done. This is really, really, really strategic Navy play, and I absolutely love to see it. We're making sure we refloat these boats. We're more concerned about getting the boats up and running, and then we send the boats over to this constructor in order to get repaired back up. That's really, really smart. I absolutely love what Markvis is doing here. Definitely the underdog has slowly become the overdog? That doesn't sound right. They've definitely crawled out of a disadvantage and made a significant navy for themselves. Oh, we should definitely be reclaiming if we're just going to have a single resurrection submarine over here. That submarine is mopped up very easily. Now, I think at this point, we might actually have a big enough navy that if we wanted to, we could take this down, we could go for that T2 navy, and then we could use the metal that's left over in this field right here to fund it. I think that might be a phenomenal play here for Markvis to suddenly catch his enemy off guard with a T2 navy. You can see that Somber Muse has not teched into a T2 lab yet. Just continually producing units, right? If you think about this, Somber Muse is just continuously losing metal when sending out these attack waves. Where Markvis is too, but also we're resurrecting these units, so we're also gaining metal. Like we're building an army, but at much less metal investment per army unit. You can see all these resurrected units right here. And suddenly Markvis has a humongous army way, way, way more powerful than Somber Muses. And so, while Somber Muse has the advantage in overall field, I think Markvis is in a phenomenal position here. Some gunships are brought to the front line to tear down some of these units over here. Working away on these anti-air towers and this heavy laser turret and all sorts of stuff over in this direction. Trying to stop a bit of a forward operation, forward operating base from coming up and online here. Nicely done that they caught that in time. That definitely could have been a whole lot worse. Missile cruisers here, missile corvettes, used as anti-air turrets or anti-air ships in order to bring down those fighter craft. Very nicely done. And the bot lab starts up right away. This is an interesting play. This is not a play that we see very often, but it is one way to tech into landlubber units from a naval position, is to get a hovercraft out. And since we've already got the plant over here, we might as well. We do see a T2 transition. That's quite interesting. Going for that T2 land-based economy. That's very nice to see. Don't hate that one bit. Let's take a look at our backline players really quick. I do see this huge engagement happening down here. Just want to take a look real quick. We are going to advanced fusions. We're getting T3 up. We have T2 air labs up. We have some bombers coming out. We'll have to keep our eyes out on that. But now that we've taken a look at that, ooh, looks like the backline player back here did actually end up quitting. And so Sargeras is now the only backliner for the blue team. But let's take a look at this here. Oh, that's the wrong button. Hold on. I know how to fix this. There we are. We can see this massive Navy field. Dolphin versus Dolphin. Brother meets brother. Cousin versus cousin. Destroyers in the back line for fire support. The Dolphins jump on top of the destroyers, but the Green Army is just way too massive, and eventually it will push forward here. Now, some bombers are being used strategically to try and blow up some of these weaker ships, but there are also anti-air vessels in here that are working to tear these down. Slowly, anyways. And yeah, Red is suddenly kicked all the way out of the water here, completely ravaged. That was very, very nicely done by Red. You can see this is the other crucial component here. We're sending in the resurrection submarines, and we're going to resurrect. I would say you could also reclaim and tech up, but this decision works just as well, because reestablishing dominance over the naval theater here is just going to affirm that their team cannot step back into it. Some Shuriken are brought out, but way too late. Yeah, we don't really have any means of getting back in the water here. I guess Somber Muse's commander is still here. But yeah, all of our economy is completely ravaged. We have no land-based economy whatsoever here, so it's going to be like starting up all the way from the very beginning of the match here. Now this is excellent. GPG is sharing the T1 economy to the Red player so that he doesn't have to rebuild quite so hard. Really, really good decision here from the team, making sure that everyone is taken care of. Absolutely love to see that. Bombers are brought forward. We're continuing to bomb this army down. But these resurrection submarines are just going to keep working. We don't have anything to deal with those. We need to see some torpedo bombers out. We need to see something like that in order to deal with this. For now, though, it's just Shuriken. How's our front line looking? We have Rattlesnake here. Long-range plasma turret available for the red team. The orange player specific... Oh, no, sorry. The brown player, Slyflox, making this turret right here. 20-ish%. Yeah, it's going to take a while. There's a lot of construction turrets trying to fire down on that thing. Looks like we did EMP some of these units here for a second there. And yeah, that's a couple of bulls going down for practically free. I mean, those Sheldon, it doesn't cost anything for them to shell away from that distance. The Rattlesnake was disencouraged from firing anymore, and so indeed it will switch to non-manual firing modes. At this point, we have T2 well and away up to the task up here. We have these cruise ships. We have a bunch of anti-air ships here, and by a bunch I mean 2. But this nuclear submarine, or rather anti-nuclear submarine, not submarine, carrier. That's the word for that ship. Going to be instrumental in keeping this alive from nuclear assault. Not sure exactly what destroyed that there. Looks like a bombing run of some sort. Yeah, we must have seen a little bit of a bombing run happening there. Maybe some friendly fire. It sounded like bombers went off, and then this exploded, so I'm not sure exactly what happened there. There are some light hovercrafts, so that must have been what happened. Hovercraft went in and the bombers followed suit. and destroyed everything. Very nicely done. Markvis pulling out some phenomenal plays. Yeah, okay, we've tech transitioned here into hovercraft, which is interesting. That's one way to make landfall. Fighters are finally brought forward. It feels like forever since these have been needed. But they're finally brought forward, and they are going to start shooting down some of these torpedo bombers. Not so concerned with those regular ones, though. So that's not our job. We only care about the torpedo bombers. At this point, just give these fighters to the Navy player, right? Just let them control them. You're probably better off doing that anyway. Little bit of chuggies here. I think we're processing some sort of big build order queue from somebody. Not sure exactly where or who, but somebody is queuing something massive here. Let's clear the screen so it doesn't get too cluttered now. And these Sheldon continue to move forward, using the Sumos as de facto vision centers here. There's so many construction turrets keeping all of this stuff alive. It just feels like this army is just impossible to kill because we keep sending units in and we keep firing on it, but no matter what we do, there's just nothing is dying. Really nicely done by the blue team here to make sure that we have the necessary equipment to keep this line well and stable. Very nicely done. The red player for the red team has completely tapped out. I guess just took one too many punches and decided that they weren't interested in playing this game anymore, and that does mean that they are conceding the Eastern Sea, the southeastern sea, to Markvis. Markvis phenomenally played here. Very, very nicely done. Getting that Navy out, making sure that the naval units are used to their maximum efficiency, transitioning into the hovercraft, getting a few picks here and there, making sure that there's some sort of way that we can actually deal with all of these units. Anti-air hovercraft working as hard as they can. They're not very good against these T2 ships, and they do come in for a bit of a bombing run. The bombers do find the commander. They also find some resurrection submarines and other vessels here. For the most part, they're cleaned up very nicely. Markv is only losing a little bit of power production there. That's not too big a problem, as we are already scaling up to T2 power in the back lines here, going for that above ground, that landlubbers economy. Very, very nicely done. Now, what is our play over here? We've finally seen it. This is what I keep telling everyone to do. You got to build this amphibious complex. You got to get these construction turrets out. This is absolutely what I love to see. Yeah, we're going to see these light amphibious tanks brought onto the beaches here. I think that is going to be absolutely phenomenal. We're even setting up a little bit of a defensive, like a little defensive perimeter here. Try and keep the enemy from pushing in here with any normal units. Ground-based units, I should say. Very nicely done. Now we have hovercraft, which cannot see underwater. And so, indeed, these marauders, you can only see their bubbles. Something is under the water there, but they can't quite tell what it is. And it's a deadly surprise, that's what it is. These are going to make land, and it is going to be a devastating shock here for Markvis. Not sure if he knows what exactly is underneath there. Torpedo bombers do find them, though, and those can definitely see exactly what's going on in the water. And immediately they start trying to bomb as many of these guys as possible. Not a bad idea. I mean, these can do a decent amount of damage to these marauders, definitely soften them up a little bit. Markvis sees this, though, and realizes what must be done. I know what I have to do, but I don't know if I have the strength to do it. Moving the commander in, setting it to kill, degunning wherever possible, and it does go up. It takes down most of those marauders, but there is still one that's remaining, and another one comes out of the water shortly afterwards. These torpedo bombers are going to keep any of the rest of them from making beachhead, which is quite nice. Very effective anti-air right there, very effective anti-sea right there, I guess I should say, but these marauders are causing devastation in the back line here. There's not a great way for the green player to deal with this at the moment. Certainly the coastal torpedo battery is trying, but it can't really shoot at anything outside of the water. So suddenly it finds itself very ineffective against these marauders. Oh, now that is a nice play. We've got some EMP bombers coming out here. An EMP bomber coming out here. But it is going to stun these long enough for a blizzard in order to actually bomb these down. We also see some light gunships getting to work on them. I'm a little bit worried these are about to be unfrozen here. They will walk in a fairly straight line, though, meaning that they will not be they will not avoid the wrath of those bombers. And so indeed, I think with the EMP paralysis here, we actually are going to be able to stop this most effectively. Very nicely done. There are more and more Marauder trailing in though, so we're going to have to see a more and more escalated response from the purple player and the green player as well. We're starting up a Scorpion battery that is always nice. Very decent option against these Marauder here. You can see it takes about 20% off each time it shoots. A little more than 20% apparently, because it just killed that one. Very nicely done. Very good hold here, using the aerial superiority. If you're playing Armada and you're playing as air, you don't have access to those shurikens, so your aerial lead becomes much more involved. You have to micro your units, you have to control them expertly, and Racha has definitely showed us how to do that. Now it's interesting that both of the highest true skill players were knocked out of this match first before any of their teammates were, which is really, really funny. You know, you could say that's a strategic decision, right? Like they focused those players down, but also maybe it was a bit of a just a coincidence of the fact that of where those players ended up spawning on the beachheads. There's still a lot of gunships right here. A whole lot of these Hornets. I believe they're the Hornet. No, these are the Wasps. I always get the Hornets and the Wasps mixed up here. Light tanks have actually infiltrated the rear production facilities here for our light blue player, Sargeras. So that is actually starting to hurt a little bit. Somebody broadcasting some information. Oh, it looks like it must be the official updates here for the game. Very nicely done. Always be careful clicking on random links from strangers. You never know what kind of nasty computer virus they might have in mind for you. Construction turrets start a chain reaction, and they will all go down. These light tanks could definitely get a whole lot more if they kept moving, but unfortunately they are just mentally blocked, right? They're mentally not in the right space here. They're just not feeling it today. They're thinking, maybe I'll just take the day off. Just like all of these ones over here. Now we have a bunch of fighters out to deal with these torpedo bombers. That's going to open up this sea lane again to the Marauder harassment. That's quite nice. You can see just how much work it takes for every single one of these fighters to actually kill one of these bombers. The difference between T1 and T2 is just night and day when you look at the actual T2 units. The Wasps here are trying their very best to deal with these anti-air hovercraft, but they're actually not very good at it. They're very good at AoE effects, so they can take down little things, a lot of little things, really nicely. But when it comes to focusing down single targets, they're not very effective at all. So you can see those anti-air hovercraft end up mopping them up. Now the front line has been paralyzed as of exactly right when I say that. I saw the EMP bombers moving in and I decided, oh, that looks interesting. So indeed, this front line is completely paralyzed here, allowing this push to stall out a little bit. So these units are going to have a much nicer time. Meanwhile, there's a whole batch of Marauder pushing up the left-hand side. We can see a conjoined effort here as the Marauder push forward from both the hot pink player and the yellow player, and they find their target here. They're going to go after the purple player. There's a shield here, so that's kind of annoying to have to deal with, but eventually these Marauders are going to burn down its energy. You can see it's slowly losing power here, and eventually the Marauders are going to be able to penetrate that shield. Continuing to fire. I would love to see these spread out a little bit. That would make them a little bit more effective here. Unfortunately, they're all grouped up, yep, which does make them prone to degunning, but instead they change course and start heading back towards the production over here. For now, Racha is spared, spared the devastation, but it looks like a whole lot of units have swept through this front forward base as well, and Red is suddenly taking a commanding lead over this match. We see the Marauder pushing forward here as well. They don't see these sneaky Petes hiding in the invisibility fields here. Also a Tachyon turret, bursting down some of these Marauders. Kind of inefficient, actually. Every time it fires, it's firing on Marauders that are already fairly damaged already. It's not perfectly efficient, per se. Eventually it's going to fall. Now this is a lot of Marauders in the back line, and there's not a great answer to this. They do find an advanced fusion reactor. Luckily for this player, it's pretty far out here, but I think its explosion radius is still going to be way bigger than enough. And indeed, it lights up most of the rest of this entire facility. Sargeras left in a bit of a state here. A lot of units out on the field and a lot of anti-air defenses, but not a whole lot of production. So we're going to be crawling back into that economy game very, very slowly if we decide to rebuild here. Meanwhile, units are just continuing to stream in from these amphibious labs, and this is exactly what we like to see. 3 amphibious labs producing these light amphibious tanks. Alternatively, we could go for 1 lab producing the turtles, but I think I like this a little bit better. Very, very nice to see. This is exactly what I would hope to see. Mater 1 coming out here and showing us exactly that he is not afraid to play a very advanced, very technical game of Beyond All Reason. And I have nothing but praise to say for that. The newbie to the channel makes their case for their presence in the higher ranks here, definitely earning their mark. Shiva falling to the Marauder here. I've actually just decided I want to clip this and make it the thumbnail. Mater earned it. A nice little high perspective shot of this. Very nice. And the blue team indeed decides to cave in under all that pressure. Decides, maybe the wrong word. They didn't really have much of a decision in the matter. Much of a choice, I do mean. And congratulations to our red team for sticking through to the very end. Interestingly, the blue team winning most of the rewards here, except for Carlson, who has won a lot of the has won the destroying enemy resource production. I think that's probably for sniping this backlane player here. But Mater 1 produced the most resources. Very, very nicely done. It's hard to win that award and lose the game, so very nicely done to Mater 1 for getting that economy up and running. If we take a look at the economy structure back here, we've got aphises coming up, we've got tons of energy converters, we've got the whole naval field filled with units, filled with energy production, energy converters, everything we can imagine. Excellently done. Take a look at these graphs here, and I hope you enjoyed watching. I will see you in the next video.